Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Isn't it great to be at a university that over 200 years has been doing all of those things? And how about a shout out to the ITCO team, the IT Communications Office, for arranging this facility to look this way. Yeah. We've not been in this room since 2011 when we really outgrew it. We moved over to the auditorium the last 7 years. With all the bicentennial things going on, it just was not possible to get this facility for breakouts in the auditorium for our event. So we decided to pull it back a little bit this year. We've gotten larger and larger. You know, last year we've been inviting more people from the public. We had like 300, 400 middle schoolers with us. We had an astronaut. But this year we are very intentionally bringing it back to us, to talk about where we are going as a team, where are you going as an individual, and thus the theme for Aspire. This would not be possible to put on an event of this scale and magnitude without our sponsors, and I want to give a special shout out to our Lux sponsors, the Peer Group and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Chad sent me a note last night. He's not able to be here today. He'll probably be around tomorrow, and Fortinet. They make this possible along with the other sponsors that allow us to put on a good show and have a fabulous staff appreciation event tonight out at the Cyber Infrastructure Building. I asked Tina who the band is tonight, and I was like, wow. She said AC/DC, and I thought, no, it was a typo, ACCC. So it's more of a duet than who you might first think, but I think we'll have a really good time. Tomorrow, I hope you'll be back in this room for the closing session with Christopher Ubrock, and he'll be interviewed tomorrow by my real boss, will be here, and that is the Dean of the Business School, my faculty dean, Heidi Kastner, who's a professor of strategy, and she'll be here to interview Christopher and talk about leadership and leadership journeys. So we've got a lot going on at Indiana this year with the bicentennial. I hope you've been keeping up, going to some of the events. For opera fans, Parsifal is starting here in just a few days. It's a compact opera. I think it's about 7.5 hours long. I'm not making that up. I think you bring a sandwich for it, but it's going to be a phenomenal recreation of something that has not been done here in decades. You've seen other ceremonies and things going on. So for us, this is our gathering to talk about where we're at with the bicentennial. President McRobbie has cast the bicentennial as an opportunity for all of us at Indiana University, for the citizens of the state of Indiana, for our many alumni beyond, to think about where we're at, to celebrate our 200 years. And I hope you're proud of what you saw in that video, cascading over the decades, but also to think about where we're going in the century or the decade ahead. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, it was pretty easy to be really very worried about higher education. There was a lot of doom and gloom out there. The demographic cliff, you know, the number of high school graduates is going to fall off precipitously in 2026, 27, 28, shrinking populations in various states. And there are certainly reasons why I was actually very concerned about it as well. So I don't mean to minimize the work ahead of us, but I want to tell you, I am fantastically bullish on the future of this university, this brand, the role that we play in the life of the state, and the opportunities ahead of us as the industry makes a few changes. But it is our aspirations that matter. We wouldn't be here had some folks not had some aspirations a few years ago. And so I want to ask you in this hour we're together this morning, to what are we aspiring? To what are you personally, yourself, aspiring in your own journey? I am thankful that some folks in the forerunner to the Indiana General Assembly about 200 years ago thought that an educated population, to have higher education in this state was an important thing. So they popped up 2 buildings, later became 5 over in Seminary Square. Those of you familiar with Bloomington, a few blocks south of the courthouse. Those 2 buildings that someone envisioned have now turned into 825 buildings and over 34 million square feet under management at Indiana University. And they serve not only our residential students, but they also serve our online students as well. And it was in this very room just about 10 years ago where our trustees said, they asked a question. They said, we've got all of these buildings and we're building more, but how do we keep building more if maybe we're not taking care of the ones that we've got? And we've got buildings that go back well over 100 years, as you know. I think it felt like Rubel was 100 years old before we tore it down. But they did an inventory, and at that time, we were just shy of $1 billion, about 900 and something million dollars behind in deferred maintenance on the facilities we have. And deferred maintenance doesn't make things pretty. It just keeps the water out. It keeps the roofs working. It fixes the windows, things like that. By the completion of the bicentennial, that $900 million deficit in deferred maintenance will be cut down to about $100 million and well on its way to resolution. And that's because somebody had the aspiration to get that done with our trustees and our president to do it. I'm also proud of this university that we opened the doors, they built a schoolhouse out in the middle of nowhere. There was no courthouse at that time. And it started with 12 men. But as you saw, by 1867, we'd radically done this crazy thing. We let women in as well. The first class of 13 women you see there, and going co-ed as that was starting to be a thing across the nation. You saw that with Marcus Neal and Frances Marshall, our first African-American graduates of Indiana University in 1895 and 1919. We've been on this journey to more closely relate the population, the demographic makeup of Indiana University to reflect that of the state. This year with 111,000 or 94,000 degree-seeking students, we have the highest diversity numbers Indiana University has ever had in more accurately mirroring the population of the state of Indiana. So as we think about, oops, one too many there. So if we fast forward from where we were to where we're going, what we can look to is what Indiana University is doing today. This summer, the Indiana Alumni Association noted 712,000 living alumni. Now, that's not our total graduates the whole time, but that is living alumni. And they are rabid fans of their alma mater in Indiana University. Not only do they watch us athletically when we do well, but they also have invested their treasure in Indiana University. Our alumni have given over $700 million, over $700 million, our living alumni, over $700 million to invest in growing scholarships, in growing labs, in growing professorships, renewing the facilities of this university. And so their passion for a future aspiration of Indiana University continues unabated. And I also want to give a shout out to many of you here, the faculty and staff of Indiana University. Over 15,000 of you have given $180 million to the bicentennial campaign. Some of it up front, some of it in estate gifts, but that tells you about the passion that we have for the aspirations of this institution. And I'm happy every day that we're in the business that we're in. I can't even imagine the number of graduations I've been to across multiple campuses. I cry at every one. And when you go to Gary, you will just bawl. It is such a community celebration at Northwest. But just last May alone, Indiana University graduated 21,500 graduates. And that's not rounded. I checked. Could it really be? No, it's not 498 or 502. It's actually 21,500. And we are a powerhouse engine in the state of Indiana. You see the headlines there, the Star, the IBJ, Inside Indiana Business. When you see an announcement that Salesforce is moving to town, or Infosys is moving to town, or they're choosing Indiana, every one of those news releases cites the quality of the educational pipeline in higher education for the reasons they're choosing to come to the Hoosier State rather than many of the other opportunities that they have available to them. So I'm proud to be part of that and all that it makes possible for the state of Indiana. So I hope you are proud as well. I'm really thankful that I get to work every day around people like you and the business of what we do, and that is education the generations coming, helping to reskill the workforce for the jobs that are ahead of us, and just the path-breaking research and insights that pour out of a major public research university every day. So I hope you have pride in that as well. So we talk a lot about our mission being research and education, but sometimes the staff here of UITS, we also play the role of teachers. So this summer, these are the first 10 interns from 4 of our universities who participated in the OmniSoc from Nebraska to New Jersey, who came and spent 4 weeks with our staff. They worked alongside the security engineers in the OmniSoc. They learned to build servers. They learned to do threat hunting. And then they spent 4 weeks back at home. They went back to Nebraska and to New Jersey and other places. And that is growing the talent pipeline for the state of Indiana and for our institutions back home. So I hope that you are proud of what you see. And when UITS was created, and that was in the year 1997, I asked around, we didn't get an exact number, but we roughly had about 400 people when it was pulled together from Indianapolis and Blooming and the telecom group. We have that many part-timers today. So we have 397, I think, part-time staff in UITS and about 1,150 or so full-time employees in UITS. And I think that's an important thing because that helps us grow our careers here at Indiana University. So let's take another video moment, and I want to roll the story of us in the life of Indiana University. I love seeing that and all that you do for Indiana University every day. I'm in such a privileged position to be the CIO and get to see and hear things from the digital humanities to the depths of research in the med school to your classrooms and the 950 or so that Stacy and her team manage, to our engagement internationally with networks and many partnerships beyond. And I can just keep going on and on. I occasionally even get a grumpy email from someone. Yeah, really, my faculty back in the business school, they think I'm still their iPhone personal help desk. But I will tell you that when I get a grumpy email from someone, I share it with someone in UITS for what we need to do. And invariably, we get it resolved. Just the other day, I got like a 3-page grumpy email from a faculty member that I knew, and it expressed everything with the genealogy of my birth and my mother. But we got on that, and about 3 days later, I got a very nice note back from this faculty member that something had been misunderstood. It was all good, and UITS had handled it wonderfully. And I hope you'll do that. It's important in the life of Indiana University to take just a little bit more time when you're writing that explanation of a process or something to look at that paragraph. Did we really get that right? Step back, maybe that needs to be edited a little bit more. To take just a little more energy when you're setting up that Crestron controller in a classroom of, does this really make sense when you look at it? So that little bit of extra energy is very important. But one of the reasons those stories, that video was even possible that you just saw, was because of the aspiration of Miles Brand and the vision and execution of Michael McRobbie. Some of you were around. In 1997 and then 1998, the Strat Plan, it said to enable the university to become a leader in absolute terms in its use and application of IT. I sat with Michael in August, just a couple of months ago, and I said to him, there's a lot of things you're going to be remembered for in IT, a lot of things that you did particularly well, and many things as president beyond that. But the thing that matters more than anything, and I want to affirm this because this is missing as an element in so many of our great university friends and peers out there, is Miles and Michael commissioned the creation of UITS, and Michael led it into the heart and life of the university, deep in supporting research, deep in supporting classrooms and technology and learning and online education, deep in building scale and economics. And I think that one thing, so that we didn't get the sociology in our head of that we're a service organization over here to the side, but we're actually a provider and enabler of the very mission of Indiana University, including our engagement with the life of the state. So I hope that you see that in the work that you do. And so I ask you, well, in the decade ahead, to what do we aspire? In your own personal career journey, to what do you aspire? You may be a person in this audience and you have found your calling. You like what you do, it's a great work and life balance, and it suits you well, and you're very good at it. You may have some aspirations of, I want to learn a new skill. I want to move into a leadership role. I want to change divisions. I'm ready to do something a little bit different. So we've had a lot of people on the move in doing that this year, and they've been writing the next chapter as they go along. And so my main message today, and I will repeat it before we leave, I hope you will develop your career at Indiana University. So you'll see some folks here. Jonathan Davenport worked in the support center, left us recently to go pursue med school. Eli Baker, those of you at the CIB, you may recognize Eli. He was working in the CIB cafe, and his good skills with customer engagement are now in the support center, helping fix more than your bagel, but maybe your computer as well. Jose Latouche, one of our first graduates of the joint cybersecurity master's degree in cybersecurity risk management by the Maurer School, the Kelly School, and now the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. Many of you know Lori Sullivan. She dealt with software for many years. She now has hardware as well. She has a whole data center to upgrade, and that's very much in motion as Lori has taken the helm of Associate Vice President for Enterprise Systems. Joe Farrell came to us from outside at Sandia National Labs and at Intel. before then. We wondered if there could ever be a successor to Debbie Allmeyer. We called him Debbie 2 for years because no one could remember, or months, no one could remember his name. And now he's actually Joe. I mean, he's doing such an awesome job across the street, all of HR. He's Joe, and he's doing fabulous for us. I'll introduce Mark Werling in a moment when we talk about privacy. Mark came to us from Fiat Chrysler externally as well. Beth Mollers, who you may know, she came to us from been here. She went to IU Northwest at Gary and the Medill School of Journalism, now back here. Helped orchestrate the bicentennial report I'll show you in a moment. We lost Adam from UITS, and that's okay, because he stayed at IU. Adam is over at the IU Foundation now, helping run their IT support and help desk there. Sam Stallion, we lost recently from UITS. She's over at the Kelly School. That may be Karen's fault for taking people from the Kelly School to the marketing organization. Sam's over at the Kelly School, and I think you know Rob Loudon has left UITS, sort of, and he is at the med school as its first ever executive associate dean, appointed by Dean J. Hess to oversee a sprawling enterprise of technology there, and Rob's double hatting as AVP for clinical affairs as well. So the chapters just keep coming. IU, we are turning the page into our third century. We are writing the book for what will be the third century of Indiana University. So I ask you, what do you aspire to for your next chapter at IU? Personally, for your professional development. The one thing that is hugely important, and I haven't said it on stage in a long time, but I want to say it again here, and that is our work as one IU IT. It doesn't matter if you're paid from a grant, if you're paid in a school or a department, if you work for the library, if you work for UITS, if you're in OVPED, if you work for communications, wherever your job may be, our job collectively is to support the mission of Indiana University. And I am thrilled that we come together to do that the way that we do and do it as often as we do. Because see, there's a lot going on around us. Now, this is 2011. So if you can't read it, I hired a consultant to help us evolve our products to cloud computing. Consultant says, blah, blah, cloud, blah, blah, cloud, blah, blah, cloud, blah, blah, cloud. And the boss says, it says, if you're a technologist and a philosopher all in one, in blah, blah, platform. I sort of feel like it's this way in IT sometimes. I go to conferences and everything seems to be running into the cloud. But let me tell you, if we consume the computing cycles that our researchers do and our students, for our high-performance computing systems, Big Red 2 and others. If we bought those in the cloud, they would cost us 250% more than what we pay to own and run those machines here with our own teams. I was at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and there's a group of CIOs with Olympic scale complaining about cloud vendors and pricing. They're like, well, who could have saw that coming? Very few suppliers, fractured buyers, high switching costs. Who would have thought that that could have happened that way? So I'm a cloud proponent. When it makes sense, we do it, smart sourcing. But when it doesn't, we do it internally because we're a big organization. We've got economies of scale, and Lori and Jim Thomas are upgrading the data center. We'll have some new capacity in there in just a few more months. It's also complex, not just the cloud environment, but all the technical things of how they come together. Some of us are just back from EDUCAUSE a couple weeks back, where Indiana University had more presenters at EDUCAUSE in Chicago this year than any other university or collective set of campuses there together. And I'm proud that we play these roles of technology leadership and help to work with and tutor our peers. We listen a lot. We've got a lot of people going to a lot of different events, whether it's networking events, support events, Stacy and her team with Unison and teaching and learning events. We are out there listening and involving, and we have roles of influence in the community. And I hope you're taking advantage of some of those. So tune in to listservs and chat forums and discussions when we are evolving a particular service. On the teaching and learning front, the Unison service is one of the things that's one of our largest endeavors. As you know, with our eText initiative, we continue to lead the nation in cost avoidance around the cost of course materials. So one more here, and that is, if you caught the news, the Australian National University, their most preeminent institution, the University of Melbourne would quibble with that, but they had an extraordinary cyber breach, and multiple ones, to the point they spent millions of dollars trying to eradicate and having to rebuild these things. Brian Smith, the chancellor or the president there, he will be here in just a couple of days. He's a fabulous guy. He's a Nobel laureate in physics, so he's reasonably bright. But, you know, they did not have some things in order between departments, schools, colleges, and the university. And that's why it's so important that we work together to help keep this place secure. You see there the headline. They created a whole website about their data breach. This is public. That incident report is like reading a horror movie. To read through this in some detail, we are studying it with the IU's president's cabinet. I urge you to look at it. But it takes the whole of our team to help keep these things in order. So words I haven't said here in a while, but I want to say them again. And that is, one UIT, we work best with edge, leverage, and trust. There are things that absolutely belong in schools and departments. Local domain knowledge, relationships, specialty expertise, they belong in schools and departments and units across the university. And there's things that we need to do with scale and leverage and efficiency, because it helps us keep our resources in our mission, and it helps us get things done. And we need to trust each other in figuring that out. Sometimes things need to move more to the edge because it's just time. Sometimes things need to come back more in scale and leverage because it's time. And it's our IT professionals trusting each other that make that possible as we go. So one last one on all of us. There's a lot of stuff here. Let's just say that if you're to the left of the graph, it's very good. The names at the bottom have been omitted to protect the innocent and guilty. What you're looking at is one of the bond rating agencies, their assessment from financial statements of operating cost per student. These are Big Ten institutions and institutions that have a AAA credit rating, as IU does. You can see IU has the lowest operating cost per student of anyone in the Big Ten or with the AAA credit rating. And it is our scale in IT, our scale in Jackie's office, in legal services, our scale in facilities, our scale in finance that enable us to make this possible. And so that's why, as we go into a challenging decade ahead, even with a strong brand and strong opportunity, we need to take advantage of the scale of Indiana University to provide the services, to provide the career paths, to ensure that we can do things as well as we possibly can and keep our money most closely in our mission as we go. So with that, I'd like to bring a couple chairs up here and invite two panelists to come up and join me. We're going to talk again. Yes, we did this 2 years ago. Yes, we did this a year ago, and we may do it next year, because this is a topic that's not going away. Data, privacy, artificial intelligence, and compliance. I'll ask Jackie Simmons, IU's Vice President and General Counsel, and Mark Werling to come and join me, please. So let me begin with, we hear a lot about privacy all the time, and thank you guys for making time this morning to be with us. But I'll just open with, Jackie, do we really need a chief privacy officer at IU? And Mark, we're not going to make you unemployed by end of day. But the reason I ask is we focused on privacy for a long time, but it was your passion about a year ago that said, with the Dean of the Med School and with Fred Kate, Vice President for Research, that we needed a chief privacy officer directly reporting to your office and to me and others. So could you tell us about how we got to that decision of deciding we needed a CPO?
Sure. Well, it ends up that there were a lot of complex laws, regulations, and things were developing here in the United States as well as in Europe that affected IU, and the fines and penalties kept mounting and growing, so it became more of a legal risk than it had been in the past. But even more important, I thought, than the fines and penalties were the reputational risk that IU would suffer. We had already had a couple of incidents that fortunately weren't horrendous in terms of what had been breached or accessed, but they were enough that they concerned me. We also had an internal audit report that was not very favorable towards the School of Medicine in particular with regard to how they were handling privacy issues.
And that's a particular area of legal compliance with HIPAA.
Absolutely.
Being one of the laws that govern that domain.
Exactly. So with the legal risk and compliance issues there, I also thought that we needed to build upon the great culture of respecting privacy that Sarah and others had started within UITS and spread that out through the university as a whole, and have a further reach. And the third thing, frankly, was to make sure we kept abreast of all these new changes, because even though a law in California doesn't seem to affect us. In fact, we have employees in California, and we have students from California, and we recruit in California. So with those three things, the legal risk, the culture, and keeping abreast of the future, I thought it was important for us to have a chief privacy officer, and I'm happy to have Mark with us.
And we had considerable discussions. You mentioned evolving law in Europe with GDPR. Us determining how we have students there, obviously. We have some operations in some countries there. A big one we had to navigate through just immediately with, I will say, almost the hysteria of it.
Correct.
When it first came out. What are our real risks and exposures there? So now, Mark, you come to us from the auto industry. How's higher ed different?
You know, I see as many similarities as differences in one respect, and that is at Fiat Chrysler, it was a global company, and so we had data privacy issues in Brazil and China, Italy, US, but every privacy question kind of raises similar issues, like what are you using the data for? How do you notify the data subjects? What are the governing compliance issues? And so whether it's all of those different things involving auto data and customer data, or you come to a university setting and it's student data, health data, and so forth, you're answering the same questions, the same challenges, and you're always asking yourself, are we really letting the data subjects know what we're doing with their data? Are we giving them informed choices? Are we clear in how we communicate? Do we have sort of old-fashioned legal boilerplate, or do we have really modern language that helps people understand what we're doing? And so, for me, the challenges are similar, even though it's a different paradigm.
I remember when we interviewed Mark saying that you do understand higher ed's, it's sort of complex. You don't just give an order here and cause things to happen necessarily. And he had this blank kind of grin on his face. It's like, yeah, you should try our web of suppliers all around the world that we have to deal with as we go. So I want to turn your attention, if they'll flip the slide up there. There was an article that came out just a couple of days ago. And let's see if we can get that slide up. There we go. A Congressman, Katie Porter, grilled Mark Zuckerberg on his position at a hearing just a few days ago. And in short, she really took him to task and said, you're trying to have it both ways. That you're sitting here telling us you and your company are a good boy, and we have policies, and we really don't need a lot of regulation, or if you do, we'll write it for you. But yet, in the same time, you're in the court arguing that you're not liable because everybody clicked through and agreed to the crazy terms that we asserted. So I'm going to ask both of you, where are we going in terms of privacy as the kind of place and moral imperative that we want to have, and yet the legal responsibility that we may have to bear over time as well? And Mark, I'll start with you of where you think we need to be going, and then turn to Jackie.
So a lot of the legal structures are premised on this notion of consent. And so you should be able to go to Facebook and click on different choices and so forth. There's a lot of skepticism that that's feasible, because how do you do that with Facebook and Instagram and everything that you're on, and Chase Bank? The other sort of way of looking at it is to say that organizations like IU need to be really making the right choices themselves in the first instance, really having an ethical perspective, a fair communication perspective. And so rather than making it all about click-throughs and choices, making it much more conspicuous. So I'll use Facebook as an example. If I read that they've been fined $5 billion for selling data to Cambridge Analytica, and I don't want that to happen again, Facebook needs to take it upon themselves to say to the consumer, we either do or do not sell political data, and that needs to be a very conspicuously communicated thing. And if you have a problem with it, here's what you do. I don't think in current state, very many companies or institutions are there in terms of having that data subject-friendly approach, and I think that's a challenge for us going forward.
Jackie.
Yeah, to add on to that, my biggest complaint nowadays are the 22-page terms and conditions that you have no real choice. You know, if you're going to buy an Apple product, you're not going to be able to pick up the phone and call and negotiate with Apple what the terms and conditions are. In fact, I'm pretty sure their update a couple of days ago that screwed up everybody's email, somewhere in those 22 pages it said it's your own fault for updating your software, right? I mean, that's how onerous their terms and conditions are. But I would hope that someday, if you were an incoming freshman at Indiana University, and we said, these are the following things we would like to use your data for: research on how students can perform better, research on medical or health issues. We might want to use it on academic progress issues. We might want to sell it to somebody who might want to sell you goods or services that are licensed from Indiana University. Which of those would be okay with you, right?
Yeah, and how would we use it to improve your experience?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, so we could learn how many people actually get on buses at certain places more regularly and know how to optimize the bus fleet.
Exactly.
A little bit more. So there's some, we've talked about this for a couple of years. Fred Kate was on this stage, or the one over there, referring to this transactional notion of privacy of, I give you word barf, you click OK, and then it's all right. Is just really a broken framework for where we're trying to go. And the question then was, who's going to resolve it? So if you'll queue up, I've got just a brand new Apple ad, just popped out a couple of days ago, about 1 minute. Let's take a look at what Apple is beginning to assert.
Right now, there is more private information on your phone than in your home. Think about that. So many details about your life right in your pocket. This makes privacy more important now than ever. Your location, your messages, your heart rate after a run. These are private things, personal things, and they should belong to you. Simple as that.
Now, I find it interesting that Apple is now ready to assert as a brand value privacy and warranting privacy, at least in marketing and messages. That is a little bit of a turn in corporate responsibility in marketing. Now, whether it is in behavior, we'll see from them over time. But I do wonder, as we head into this decade, so in many cases at IU, those are data that are ours. Student clicks, student movements, faculty movements, and grades, you know, things like this. So some part of it is protected by law. And my last question to you guys is, how will we evolve in the years ahead the vast amounts of data that this team oversees for Indiana University? How should we evolve its use and direction? Jackie first, maybe then Mark.
I think we need to make it more understandable what kinds of data we have and what they could be used for, and then have conversations with large groups of students and faculty members to say, these are the buckets of data, and we would like to hear from you. What would you be willing to let your data be used for? I assume it would be really, really difficult to have an opt-out system where Jackie Simmons could say, I don't want you to collect my clicks, right?
And if I may, we just met with a group of the Board of Eons. It's a very prestigious student group. They take on a couple projects a year, and this is one they are taking on this year. And part of that conversation is, how do we balance, like, the mass hysteria of none of my data, anytime, anywhere, I want IU to be stupid in learning how to improve its services, or the worry of very nefarious uses over here? How are we going to strike that balance? Mark, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I've really seen privacy change quite a bit since I started doing it just a few years ago. Even 5 years ago, people would say, where are the social security numbers? Where's the protected health data? What does the law tell us we need to do? In a lot of these areas with biometrics and geolocation and all the rest of it, we're permitted to do things with that legally. But then we have to ask ourselves, should we? And is it friendly to the data subject? Are there risks of bias and things like that that we need to work out of the system? And that's going to be a very open-ended challenge for us. We can't just look at the rule book and get an answer. It's going to be a very consultative process.
So for example, Dave Gent sitting behind me and Kirk, they know everyone's here who's on Wi-Fi. We know you're here. We probably know which room you're sitting in, maybe even which chair. So that is institutional data. What do we do with it, and how can it be used under what terms? Team everywhere, in the years ahead, we have a lot of work to do to figure this out. And I'll tell you where I'm at on it right now. I don't want us to be stupid. I want IU to make use of institutional data to learn and improve our services in incredibly responsible ways. And I don't want us to be involved in nefarious activity and selling and trying to monetize and do stuff over here, because these are back to our values and what we want to achieve here. And I am sure we're going to need a lot of guidance from our new Chief Privacy Officer. Mark, thank you.
Brad.
And we always defer to counsel. Thank you. So I appreciate them coming to spend a little time with us this morning. That's topic number one. Now, that's the data we've got in trying to understand, and much of it in transactional kinds of systems. But the whole world is evolving super fast, not just about transactional systems and student records or your paycheck or things like this, but the world of social, the world of marketing, how we communicate is evolving super fast. And thank heavens, Karen Ferguson Fuson has come to join us as IU's new Chief Marketing Officer. Karen, come join us, please. Welcome. So Karen, tell us just briefly where you came from and why you're here.
It's a great question, Brad. So I spent the last 25 years of my career in the newspaper business, and particularly in helping transform our company, Gannett, which is now going through another transformation into a digital business. I'm here because after I decided to give up that journey and get off the road, I was traveling 40 out of 52 weeks a year. I have little ones, so it was time to be at home. I met Michael, I met you, and I learned all the great things that are going on at IU. And and actually, I could thank all of you. One of the reasons I chose IU for my next career was because of the incredibly strong technology department. And my vision, or my belief, that as a marketer, marketing and IT work in sync together to really create great brand experiences. And that data and technology are going to be what's allowing marketing to be really successful for our university in the long term. So the investment in Salesforce, the investment in an IT team that's really committed to that was one of the big reasons I decided to join the university.
So as a marketer, our Chief Marketing Office, we've got a lot of stories to tell around here. Stories for students we want to come and join us, or stories for the IU brand. What are you learning about what stories we need to say and how to the world out there?
Yeah, it depends on the audience that we're talking to. I think one of the things that we have an opportunity to do is to really understand our audiences and our constituents better, and to make sure we're being really relevant in the stories we tell to them. So we have literally hundreds of thousands of stories we can tell, whether it be to an alumnus or a prospective student or to a parent. I think what we need to focus on is understanding where we meet those constituents and what story we tell them. So being really focused is important.
And so you shared this with me, and you said this was your life. You lived the newspaper magazine dive.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that means in terms of our digital competence and capabilities of how we tell our stories.
You could also rename the slide, Why Karen Left the Newspaper Business. Right? Because 05 to 2020 was quite a ride. I think that the thing that's interesting is when you look at how fast digital ad spend has grown, from only 6% of total United States ad spend to, it'll be near 50 by 2000. That's a very short period of time to have that kind of channel changing in America. And I think what that means is that skill sets it's very hard to change your skill sets as fast as the media business is changing. I think one of our opportunities at IU that we are really working with our team on, both at IU Studios and across the university, is how do we really move from discussions of billboards and print to discussions of AI and digital. And really that's on a continuum, we're not here for saying we're only talking about billboards and print, and we're not here for saying we're only talking about digital and AI, but we're just trying to move the dial this way so that we can be more relevant.
An adage in marketing was, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. But as we move to digital, increasingly we do know which half, and we can change as we go along. And I know your team is working to build the digital capabilities out quite substantially. You've referred to a perfect storm. You want to walk us through this?
I would say this is the perfect storm of opportunities, and interestingly enough, I think this storm is a bit of what I went through 10 to 15 years ago in the newspaper business, and so I feel like I'm kind of reliving my past, hopefully not hopefully, but with a different outcome in terms of the business. So when you think about how much media is changing, you think about how much marketing technology is changing, and then you think about the headwinds that we have in higher education, given the demographic shifts that are coming upon us in the next 10 years. We really got three pieces that really ensure that we need to change and we need to figure out where to meet our students, where to build our brand so that we can really take advantage of these opportunities.
Right, if you'll pull the slide back up, you talk about the things that we need to be working on and doing right now in this perfect storm around journeys being one of those. What do we mean when we say marketing's engagement in something called a journey? We've got an admissions group, don't they do journeys? And if they come to UITS, they've got a support issue, we fix their stuff, okay, then off they go. So what do you mean by journeys at IU?
I think, Brad, you and I call it the big J journey, right? Mm-hmm. Which is how do we engage with somebody kind of from birth to death, and what does that start to look like? How do we understand everybody from a camp all the way through enrolling in IU, all the way through their life, and make sure that journey is seamless? And I think that and also improving that journey, anything we can do around personalization and or using as many different channels as possible to understand where we engage with those.
Yeah, I got an offer, I think a third offer from Google the other day to upgrade and buy the Pixel 4 phone. The 4 is out now, and my response was, you idiots, I ordered one from you 2 weeks ago. Why are you still sending me marketing messages that you don't know in my journey? I've already bought the very thing that you're trying to tell me about. And I think at IU, we have a whole lot of getting smarter work to do about how we help our faculty and staff with our journeys along the way.
Yeah, I think that consumer expectations just changed dramatically, and when we look at the Gen Zers that are coming up, will be our future students, current and future students, we have to kind of meet them where they are and in the channels they want to be met in. And I've shared with the group, and I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but we have to be as funny as YouTube and as easy as Amazon Prime, right? That's what 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds expect nowadays, and they don't give higher education a break. They don't say, well, that's a higher education website, so we could be crappy, or that's a higher education mobile experience, so we could be crappy. I mean, their expectation, and the universities that win, frankly, that really succeed and thrive the next 10 years are going to have really seamless digital experience that connect all the dots for these students.
So in your first 6 months with us, we really completely reinvented the marketing and comm organization, reorganized, focusing on sub-brands as well, that there is a team that works on the Kokomo brand and works on IU Northwest as a brand. Those are distinct experiences. IU Online as well. Getting a little mic echo, I think, so we're going to switch you over. Or teams that work on, like I say, IU Online or Bloomington brands. We've reslotted 92 people, I think, into new roles in the marketing and communications organization, and the big diagram that we have up there that shows the integrated media environment, that when we put a message out, we're working now to look at our paid media as well as our earned media covered by reporters, as well as websites that we may own. Is this being prominent on our sites themselves as well? So as we look a little bit to the future then, let's get the next slide up if you guys will. the things that are coming our way next, we've been working on this new reputational campaign. And I know one of the things was you thought we needed a bolder voice. So can you tell us about this campaign? This one ran in the spring, and we've got another one in the works now.
Yeah, this was an opportunity for us to really show how our brand has a lot of flexibility in it. One of the things I heard when I first worked as a consultant and then as I joined IU in this role was that a lot of our partners felt that the brand was really inflexible and that everybody looked the same and it wasn't bold and creative enough. And so this was a challenge to us to try to message senior academic advisors or academic officials across the United States with a really strong message about IU. And so this campaign really allowed us to lean into that. We also used it as a test. We ran 12 different digital campaigns across multiple channels to understand what was most successful. Now this fall, we're taking 80% of what worked, and we're running that again, and we're doing 20% that we're testing. So I believe marketing should be based on metrics. So figure out what works, keep doing that, and then add to it and try new things.
Yeah, we've got the digital campaign up there now. You can see the variations. And so every time that they're working on one, they'll do 3 or 4 expressions of it, measure digitally which of these are actually working in drawing clicks. Drive more and buy more of that, reduce the ones that are not. In our judgment, we go, oh, that one's pretty. Like, well, that one really is a dog. It doesn't perform well. This is the one that actually performs well. So we're building out that infrastructure to be able to do that. And you mentioned this is in the field right now. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is probably the top performing campaign that we've had. It's beat all 3 that we ran this spring. And sometimes in marketing, you get lucky, right? And this particular campaign, there's so much discussion right now, especially in the political world, happening about bots and about the truth and about fake news, that our ability to take this wonderful work that we're doing at SICE and the media school and turn it into a strong message about how we're creating the technology that stops spreading of misinformation, it really just has performed remarkably. The numbers digitally are really, really strong.
Yeah, it's fabulous. If you've not seen this, go to the landing page, truth.iu.edu. They've done a phenomenal job. This is the work of Phil Mensah out of the Luddy School and a handful of colleagues, really phenomenal in what's going on there. So then we've got this elephant too, and this Kathy's here, I think Chris is behind me, you and your team. What a ginormous lift. Can you tell us about, say a year from now, what would you like to see out of Salesforce for the marketing organization?
Kathy and Chris and their team have done a remarkable job driving adoption and integrating a really complex tool into our culture. And that's, frankly, probably the hardest work. I think as CMO, my team gets to come in and do the fun work, which is they've bought this incredible expensive tool, very expensive tool that has bells and whistles. And frankly, one of the reasons I joined was because of all the bells and whistles. And so my goal, hopefully working with Kathy and Chris, is over the next year to turn on and try all the bells and whistles so that as we start to head into 2021 and what the changing demographics, that we are really prepared with all the whiz-bang marketing technology to really engage with our students in the best possible way.
Yeah, when I look at the roadmap you and Kathy and Chris and Sudhir, your teams are working on, it is jaw-dropping in how you can move from not knowing much about some of our marketing engagement and your preferences and journeys to knowing a whole lot more than we did. And that allows us to start having smarter interaction experiences with you than we ever could have before. So if I can wrap us up, go back to the visual. I came across this not long ago, and I apologize that it's a bit small for the size in here, but let me just tell you about this. We were well into the work that we're doing with the IT team and the marketing team, and this comes from one of my favorite authors. He's at MIT, at the Center for Information Systems Research, and he says, if you're trying to figure out where your organization is going, how do you future-proof your organization? And so along the bottom is operational efficiency. It's how good are your systems and your cost of running them. Because if your systems aren't good, that's not going to work. And if they're just eating up all your money and you don't have any money to get better, that's not going to work over time because the future will change. So the bottom is how good are your systems. The vertical is how good is your customer engagement. Do your customers engage you? They have a high net promoter score. They don't say you're all right. They're fans. They go out and talk about you. They try to tell other people to come to you. So how do you go about this? We got some systems that need to be fixed. We got some journeys that need to be improved. So 3 paths that he talks about. Path number 1, like, wait, we're going to get all the systems fixed. Wait, hold it. When we get them all fixed, then we're going to start making the customer thing better. Number 2 is, oh, screw that. Let's just fix the customer experience. We've got Salesforce, it slices, it dices, it toasts, it bakes, and we'll just run up the vertical axis and we'll make the experience awesome, but then they hit our systems that aren't really very evolved for what they want to do. So we're not trying to do either of those. We're taking that number 3 up the middle. We are not silos and spaghetti. I think we're a little more refined than that. But we are taking that path up the middle of improving our systems, improving the integrity of the enterprise implementation of Salesforce, the number of vice presidents and their team that are engaged in this with their units. I've told Kathy and Chris, they have gone from wishing they could move a boulder to pushing a boulder up the hill to now chasing the boulder down the other side of the hill, to being in front of the boulder that is accelerating towards them, coming at them right now. And so that's on that horizontal, and with Karen and her team leading on that vertical axis, we've got a lot of work to do. In Indiana University, we can be in a markedly different place 1 year from now. By the time of this conference next year, with the progress that is underway and hopefully your good engagement too, we can be in a better place. Karen, thank you for coming to spend time with us today. So a few more things as we bring this morning session to a close, to Aspire. One is we've got the bicentennial report out. Dan's got one he's going to hand me, right? Dan, you have a bicentennial report. There we go. If you have not seen this, they are phenomenal. Beth and her team did this in the communications office. It is the story of you. It is the story of us deeply engaged in the life of the Academy, and I resisted for 12 years. We never did an annual report. I had to do one this year. You notice it's called the Bicentennial Report. Maybe I won't have to do one next year. But it's phenomenal. You can see it at uits.iu.edu/200. Now, we've got that one done. We've got a few more things coming our way just in the next few days. If you've been up to Indianapolis, the ICTC, we got a lot of moving around. They're putting in furniture. That's a picture from yesterday. You can see some brighter colors going in there. Here is a second picture of the new global knock that is on the ground floor. Those windows that you see over to the right, that is the hallway going down to the Student Technology Center. I want students walking by. I want them looking in there and think, I wonder if I want a job here. That looks cool. That looks interesting. What are the internship opportunities here? Kudos to Dave Gent and his team pulling in that $42 million contract from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We've worked with them for about 8 years. They said, y'all's good. We'll take 10 more years of that. And oh, by the way, we need to add some more things. That contract has already been expanded, even since it was signed. So 15 years in the ICTC, it was time for a refresh. January 20th, we got a big birthday coming up. Now, that is Martin Luther King Day. It is an employee holiday, but it is the moment of IU's bicentennial. So we've got some events and things going on that day. One thing we'll be doing is ringing the bells. So the new Carillon, if you have seen it out in the Arboretum here, the Arthur R. Metz Grand Carillon. If you don't speak Carillon, that means it has more bells than a Carillon. It is a Grand Carillon. And then with the organ faculty here in the Jacobs School, it is going to be a phenomenal instrument for the university. I believe it will become as iconic as the sample gates for this campus. It's beautiful. If you've not seen it, the bells are in there now. That's a picture just from 3 days ago, seeing all the bells. Remember, we had the Carillon, it was over on 17th Street, and it was about to fall over. So that was one of the reasons of bringing this over and all funded with philanthropy. The other thing we're going to do, we will ring those bells on January 20th. But the other thing that we do that's even perhaps slightly more exciting for me is we're going to submit the first job to Big Red 200. I don't know if it'll be Hello World, maybe something more complicated, but this is a rendering of our new supercomputer. Matt, Dave, and team have done a phenomenal job in negotiating and getting this put together. Maria has done a beautiful job on the front artwork. We still have 250 academic disciplines vertically etched on it. The surface is not even, but what you can see in Big Red 200 is telling the journey of human communication and computation from the earliest days of Morse code to the ones and zeros of the digital era, to the connectedness systems that are artificial intelligence that you see in Big Red 200's capability with AI. So here we are, as we aspire, the next chapter. I can foresee the next chapter at Indiana University, and I think the decade ahead looks like we got a lot of work ahead of us. But I want to tell you, I am super excited and bullish on the prospects of Indiana University and our service to the state in education, research, and onto the nation and onto the world. So what I will ask you, as you're writing your next chapter, may I encourage you, please, develop your career at Indiana University. Be happy in the job that you're doing now. Do the best you can. If you want to add skills, talk to your supervisor about it. Talk to your peers. If there's something that you think you may want another career trajectory, you're ready to move from UITS over to the library or move over and work on cloud computing or want to go in cybersecurity, if you're thinking that you'd like to do that, if you leave UITS, go to another unit at IU. If you're here from another part of the university, go anywhere in the university and come to UITS. Because I do think our best people have had a wealth of experiences moving around the university and within UITS. So I'm always appreciative when you choose to build your career at Indiana University. So I hope you'll be back in this room tomorrow. We've got Christopher Uberbach will be here talking about leadership, again, interviewed by my boss, Dean Heidi Kesner. We've got the staff appreciation event tonight out at the CIB, not ACDC, but ACCC, I think, and it should be a really great time. I know some of you were at the Alumni Center last night. This is the 24th Statewide IT Conference at Indiana University. So thank you for your attention this morning. We've got a few more details in here we're going to get through and some staff appreciation awards. I hope you will feel inspired as you aspire in visiting some of the 67 breakout sessions, tutorials, and working groups here at Statewide this year. Thank you.